I'm delighted today to have Representative Peirce from Falmouth and Anna Keller from Democracy Maine talking about the online voter registration bill that's being proposed this session. So for folks who are watching, I'm Desti Homan-Sprague with the Maine Women's Lobby. Maine Women's Lobby has been advocating for gender equitable legislation since 1978. So we're thrilled to be able to support this conversation today. Happy to have both of you just say hello to the folks and kind of join us on the floor here. Representative Peirce, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me today to talk about my bill, online voter registration. So I'm Representative Teresa Peirce. I'm serving my 4th term in the House of Representatives. I represent the majority of Falmouth at the State House. I've served on the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee in my first 2 terms. I was the House Chair of the Marijuana Implementation Committee during part of my 2nd term, and now it's my second term on the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee, where I'm the House Chair of that committee this year, and we primarily work on the budget and bonding, and we're in a lot of discussion about that right now. So thanks so much for having me here. I've always had a long interest in elections, and also have had a number of bills that didn't make it all the way through for some other types of election reform. So I'm excited about this one because I think there's a really great shot of getting this all the way through in this session.
Super. And Anna, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Anna Keller. I'm the Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Maine and Maine Citizens for Clean Elections. We're 2 nonprofits, nonpartisan nonprofits that work on elections and good government, and we work together under the banner of Democracy Maine. And we are really pleased to be supporting Representative Peirce's bill on online voter registration. It's one of our highest priorities for this legislative session, and working in coalition with a number of groups, including the Maine Women's Lobby as part of our Mainers for Modern Elections coalition, to make our elections more secure, more accessible, and overall more modern.
Super, thank you so much. And for folks who are watching, whether you're in the Zoom room or whether you're on the Facebook live stream, feel free to enter your questions into the chat. Happy to take those questions as we go through the conversation. And if you're in the room, you can also raise your hand as well. So Representative Peirce, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about this bill.
Sure. So online voter registration is not something new. There are a number of states across the country that already do this process. But just to step back a minute, you may remember when you moved to your community, you might have gone into your town hall and you filled out a piece of paper that said you wanted to be a voter, and then the town clerk takes that and processes it and you become part of the voter rolls. What we've really seen over the pandemic, but also just in the course of advancing into more modern elections, is that there's a way to do this securely and safely online. And what it does is provide more opportunity for people to register to vote in a convenient, easy way. And I think what's happened with COVID in the last year, we've really realized that there's so much more we can do in a secure way, and people are much more comfortable doing things online than maybe they used to be. And so bringing this forward is an ability for people to log on to the Secretary of State's site, type in some information that verifies who they are, and then sign up to be a registered voter in whatever community you live in Maine. It also gives you the opportunity, if maybe you moved from Portland to Falmouth for some reason, maybe you downsized or going into Ocean View or something, you could just go online and change your address within this system as well. So it keeps our data rolls much more up to date and our voter rolls much more up to date. What's great about Maine is that we've had a long history of being ahead of the curve on a lot of things around our elections. We have strong participation voting in all of our elections. We have RCV, ranked choice voting. We were early adopters of a lot of great things, not only just in the last 5 or 6 years, but also 20 or so years ago. But we've been a little late to the game with this, and I think it's not time for us to get caught up with the rest of the nation. So I'm very excited to be talking about it with people.
One of our first questions from the audience is probably one that you've gotten a number of times and will continue to get. So just tell us a little bit about the specific logistics. Like, how do you verify somebody's identity when it happens in the online platform.
Do you want to take that, Anna, and we'll tag team around here? Or?
Sure. That the information that is asked for would be asked for through an online system is very similar to what is asked for on the paper card right now. So you'd put in your name, your birth date, and you'd put in a form of identification. So for most people, that's going to be their driver's license number. And when you put in your driver's license number, the system is connected on the back end with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And so they have access to the information there, which includes your citizenship status, and it includes, for most people, will have a signature on file with the Secretary of State through the BMV. And that means that then there's a signature that can get transferred to your clerk, and then this clerk has a signature on file for you to make sure that when you're doing an absentee ballot or signing a petition, they've got that signature. So for most people, that's how it's going to be. One really important piece around this bill is that there's a way for people who don't have a driver's license to also use the system. That's a really important piece from an equity perspective for us to include. And that, again, is similar to how it works right now with the paper card, where if you don't have a driver's license number, you can put in the last 4 digits of your social security number on the paper card. And so similarly, if you put in your social security number, that is used to verify your identity. And then we're still going to see how this is going to be implemented in Maine in terms of how they get that signature on file for you. It might be that you can sign something on paper and take a picture of it, or sign right on a tablet, or maybe you'll get something mailed that you sign and you send back to them. There's some opportunities to use new technology there, but the goal overall is to make sure we're not excluding anyone who doesn't have access to the newest technology. But I think the thing to remember with this is that when we say online stuff, sometimes people get worried that it's going to be less secure. But in this case, really, it's going to be a lot more secure than having pieces of paper floating around that might get entered in wrong, and that definitely cause a lot more work for the clerks, for the Secretary of State, for everyone. But this is going to make sure that our voter registration rolls are actually much more up to date, and people are registered where they're supposed to be with a system like this.
Sure. One of the questions is about, at the beginning of the pandemic, we knew we were going into a major election. And so there were a lot of different changes made in order to ensure that people could continue to vote. And some of those changes were expansion or departure on what had happened previously. And there was some opposition to those changes, including opposition to the extended absentee ballot, et cetera. Do you foresee that there will be similar opposition to this bill, or what do you see as some of the key challenges?
I think all bills have challenges. Some people think they're the best thing since sliced bread. Other people think the world's going to come to an end if we do these things. So I think the success of this bill will depend on doing things like this, where we share with people the process, where we know that we're working with the Secretary of State, that we're creating something very safe, very encrypted, that will actually provide more access to more people to sign up to register to vote, or to update their voter registration, whatever that might be. And so I anticipate there's always a little bit of, even from every sector, right? Like, it might not work. What about this? What about that? And I think just staying with the process, explaining to people what it is the best thing that you can do. But at the end of the day, this has expanded voting for states that have done it across whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. More people register to vote, and that's a good thing for democracy. So it's not a partisan thing. This is about just ease of access, and ease of access for multiple different groups. Like when I first started thinking about this, it really was about sort of the college age kid, right? Or the young voter who's so used to doing things online. But as I dug in with the help of Anna and her group and other people, what you really see is this is great for so many people. It's great for the young business woman who can't get away from her place of business to get this done. It's great for the child care worker. It's great for the veteran who might be doing some traveling. It's great for my mother as a senior citizen to be able to go online and do this. So there just really is a tool that people are becoming more comfortable with using and doing that just offers greater access for everyone at every spectrum. So I see this from the 18-year-old first voter to my 86-year-old mother being able to participate in ways that other people, that you just haven't had the opportunity to get to your town hall to do. So I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to address any confrontation that might happen around it. But I'm confident that if we do the work ahead of time, that we'll eliminate some of those. So.
I may or may not know someone whose license is 6 months out of date because they haven't managed to get a new picture. So it's for real. It's hard.
It's hard. It's very hard. And I think what the pandemic showed us is that people who never thought about voting absentee, correct, voted absentee. You know, I was someone, I always went the day of. I got my sticker. I was never gonna, you know, I just, you move away from those things when you're thinking about public health and public safety, but then you also think about, well, why am I doing that, right? What do I really need to be doing that if it's just for the sticker? Now, most of the time I'm standing out at the polls, which I didn't do this time, but I'm hoping to get back to that. That's actually something I missed doing. So it's a different dynamic for me, so.
We also saw that people this year learned that doing things in person sometimes is not going to work for everyone. Doing things by the mail sometimes is not going to be as reliable or as easy as we thought. And I think for a lot of people, it really opened our eyes to the challenges that have always existed for folks with disabilities, for folks who are homebound, for folks who for example, many millennials that I know do not have a printer at home, do not have, stamps and envelopes lying around. The idea that to register to vote online, you'd need to register to vote by mail, you'd need to provide not just the card, you'd also have to provide a copy of your ID and your proof of residence. And figuring out how to do that, like, do I have to go to library? Okay, well, the libraries aren't open to have a printer. Okay, how do I do this? Becomes so many extra steps to jump through. And for people who are used to doing things online, it feels like, what is this process that requires all of these things from me that are all out of my normal range of daily activity? And so I think we've realized with the pandemic, we all kind of tried some new things and learned how to cope with some of the problems that many people in our community have been facing all along. And then just the other thing that I would say is that this doesn't take away any of those other methods. People can still register in person. You can still go register day of at the polls. You can still register by mail. We can have voter registration drives. We can do all of the things we've always done, but we're adding in the online method to reach even more people.
Do you see, are there any other sort of unexpected, I'd say, challenges or opportunities, but things that people might not think of, either about the work to get this bill through or to implement it? Sometimes we forget about all of the work that happens on the other side once you get the bill passed. So I'd be happy to hear from you about those sort of challenges or opportunities.
Well, while this bill will certainly save money in the long run with the lack of processing or what has to happen on the other end if we were to stay with strictly paper or showing up at the town hall, there of course will be a fiscal note to this. And so it's about thinking about how much that fiscal note is, how to work with the Secretary of State within her new world and new realm about thinking about this and working toward getting that across the finish line about how we might pay for it. That's always, I'm the chair of appropriations. I think a lot about how we pay for things and how things make it through. I'm excited to be shepherding this bill, but I'm also realistic that we'll have to think about that. And it's a competing priority of a lot of other competing priorities during a pandemic. That being said, we have some opportunity, I think, particularly with the new Secretary of State, to think about ways that we have been utilizing and helping people vote, how we might make that better and more efficient, and then in the long run, having that be as a cost savings and an ease savings for everyone. So I see that as a little bit of a challenge. It's not insurmountable, but we certainly have to pay attention to it.
And I would add on the opportunities side that we see online voter registration as part of a bigger move to making voter information and the whole process around voting more streamlined and accessible for folks. And during this election, we were constantly hearing, why is the Secretary of State's website so hard to manage? Why do I have to go over here to request an absentee ballot and then over here to figure out where my polling place is? Why is there no list of which towns have drop boxes? Like, people wanted more, and we got some things. We got ballot tracking for absentee ballots, which was great. But we kept saying, but why can't we have this? And the answer is, we can have all of those things. It just is going to take some money and some time to be able to sit down and do it in a way that our elections bureau, where there's 7 people who run elections in Maine, literally 7 people.
Literally 7 people.
Secretary of State's office. They were working weekends, they were working overtime, they were sleeping in their office. Like, I understand that they couldn't get anything else done. And so a lot of us in the nonprofit sector were trying to invent these systems. We made a Dropbox map, we did all of these things, but this should be coming, directly from trusted messengers in the Secretary of State's office and through the towns. So now that we are past the hurdle of the giant election, we have the opportunity here to think out not just what are we going to get done before the next election in June, but where do we want to be 2 years from now, 4 years from now, and what kind of resources and systems have to get put in place to do that. And so I'm really optimistic that having this conversation right now about online voter registration fits in with our new Secretary of State. There's going to be a stakeholders group coming together with folks from the advocacy community and clerks and folks from inside the Secretary of State's office to start talking about these issues. We all got to learn a lot about what each other do throughout the election. And so that now we have this opportunity, challenge of funding aside, to start really making these changes where our laws are really strong, but how they actually look and how they're implemented and how it feels to the voter interacting with it can be clunky and hard to navigate, and we can do something about that.
I've been asking what are some surprises for this series of Bill Bites, and who's with me in saying I am most surprised now about there being 7 people. Like,
it is a shocking statement now that 7 people in our Secretary of State's office sort of handle the overarching mechanisms of our elections. There's a ton of work done at everyone's town hall. We all love our town clerks and they do a great job, but could we take some of the burden off of them by having, I'm not talking about 100 people or anything, but creating mechanisms like this that help with that burden, but also having looking really at how many people are in that Secretary of State's office and what we need to do to take some of that burden off what's going on at our town halls, because it's stressful. This was a stressful year, as we all know, in all of our lives, but it was particularly stressful around elections. And I think that Maine navigated it very well. We did some, the governor did some things that allowed us to do some things faster and quicker and more efficiently. I think you'll see other bills that talk about a lot of those things that helped. But we also need to keep pushing forward and understanding that we haven't done all the things that we could do to ensure that our democracy is strong and healthy, and that we are spending less time worried about how to sign up to vote and more time worried about who we might vote for, and understanding those policy issues and those things around the state that are going to move our state forward in a lot of different ways. So I'm excited to be part of the process.
Do either of you see a gender intersection with this bill? I mean, we're a gender equity organization, and of course we understand that, you know, gender appears in almost every place, but I'm just interested in your reflections on that.
I appreciated this conversation as a time to reflect on that, because I think we have talked a lot about what this looks like as an equity issue around age and disability and income, and even around race, but thinking about it from a gender perspective is a good invitation, I think, for all of us. A couple things that occurred to me were thinking about you know, people who are doing more than their share of the labor in this world, and thinking about women doing some working full-time, taking care of kids, doing all the things in so many cases, and the just one more thing to have to do element of needing to do the voter registration through a clunkier process, I think is an extra burden. And when it falls on people who already are facing extra burdens, then that is, you know, it makes it harder. Just as I was saying that, it was making me think as well about all of the labor within of our clerks in the Secretary of State's office, and the really cumbersome process of, let's get all of the paper cards and spread them out on a table, and then we're going to mail them off to the right office where they're going to hand type them back in again, and thinking about all of the work that therefore we're putting on these employees at the state and the town level, who are people who have a lot of other important things that they can be doing to serve their community. And so, you know, not to devalue that labor, but it is something that's a burden that is falling on, I think, primarily a body of a female workplace.
That was the first thing that came to mind with me, was the female workplace, right? And I think I mentioned it sort of the top of this discussion, was the child care worker who's, you know, they're tethered to their home all day, as they should be, taking care of, you know, beautiful little babies and making sure those parents can go work. They can't get to a town hall that's open Monday through Thursday on odd hours. And this is like, it's like for me showing up at the transfer station, I always go on the wrong day because I don't know when it's open. And I think the same thing here, like, it's just one more thing, like, I'll try to get to it. But if you could just sit down at your computer and whip that out on an easy website, you know, it just helps ease that burden of something that I think 99% of people want to participate and do. You know, it's just how to make it simpler for them to do it is really the key. So.
Sure. Before we sort of head into the close-up, there is one quick question from the chat, which is, would this allow for changing party affiliation online? Do we know?
That is a good question. Anna?
I believe so. It would be the same restrictions that we have around changing party affiliation, where if you are registered in a party, you can't change after, I believe I want to say 6 weeks before the election. I should know this, but that number has floated out of my mind. But if you're an if you're not enrolled in a party, you could register and with a party, you know, up through the election. And I believe that would be true online as well. One of the things that we've been talking about with folks at the parties is that many of the people who are most likely to register online, and people who have not already registered, people registering for the first time, are most likely to register as unenrolled. And because if, you know, the thinking goes, if they wanted to be registered with a party and had that political affiliation, they might be registered already, and so some of the people that we're reaching are less likely to be enrolled in a party. So I think it poses an interesting question for the parties about how to reach some of those people, but they'll be in the system, so maybe they'll be easier to reach. It popped up in our conversation around whether Maine should have open or semi-open primaries. Like, it's interesting to think about how this system could have some of those other implications for how parties engage with voters, which is stuff we're just starting to think about.
Great. Another quick question. Does this bill have an LD number yet?
You know, I just got the bill jacket today, so it still has an LR number. So I will work over the next several days to solidify my co-sponsors and get that up and ready to go. And then that goes back to the revisor's office and they print out the LD, which then gets sent to, this will go to the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee for a public hearing, the VLA, better known VLA, once it has an LD. So I know that all of these great organizations will make sure that people out there in the world are aware of when this is happening and when there'll be a public hearing on it. I encourage you all, if you're in support of the bill, I'd obviously love to have people come and testify who are just thinking this might just be a good thing, and not just the advocates who are amazing, but others as well. Obviously, we do everything on Zoom now. This public hearing would look a lot like this, where you would sign up and say you want to come testify, and you'd submit some testimony via email, and you would get a link so that you could come in and give testimony. There's some great instruction around that, which I'm sure everyone will share when these LDs come out. So we won't be in person up on the 4th floor of the State House, unfortunately, hanging out outside of Representative Chiazzo and Senator Lucchini's committee, but we'll be there in spirit online. So please come participate at whatever level you'd like.
And I've dropped into the chat here, and we will on Facebook as well, that Maine Women's Lobby has an online tracking document that includes this bill. So every Monday that's updated, and when there is an LD number, it'll appear over there. You can do a little search function for Representative Peirce or voting, or any of the kinds of keywords you're looking for. I'm confident, Anna, that League of Women Voters must also be have information about the bill online as well.
We are actually in the process. I was really hoping we'd have it all up and ready today, but we will. We're doing an advocacy week next week, starting on Monday. I just stuck the link for that in the chat here as well. Tuesday is our, Wednesday is our state action day. And so one of the things we're going to be talking about on that day is this bill. And certainly by then, and maybe a little before, we will have a page up with a lot more information about it, and a tool that you can use to email your legislator, personal comments. When you write your own letter, it's always going to be more effective, but sometimes it helps to have a starting point. So we've got a tool that you put in your address and it pops up for your legislator and some talking points around the bill. Because we were trying to be all fancy like that, it's going to be up next week. But I stuck in for our advocacy week. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff. We've got multiple actions and multiple events happening every day for a week, and it's going to be a lot. So in case you are not on enough Zooms. And then I also stuck up the link for our volunteer page. As I think the League of Women Voters is made up of amazing volunteers and citizen activists and advocates from all walks of life, all genders, and we are always looking for more people to help us work on election things. So
wonderful.
Definitely can follow up there.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate both of your time so much, and for all of the folks who joined us in the Zoom room and on Facebook Live. Next week, we have Representative Victoria Morales, who is also the director of the Quality Housing Coalition, to talk about housing justice. So thank you today, and look forward to seeing many of you again next week, I hope.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye-bye.